Trade season is upon us as we go towards the fantasy playoffs. Figure out who is a dynasty cornerstone for your team right now. Let's go.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. We're your hosts, Calvin Timms and Dale Terry. And we're back with another fun episode. We can't, the podcast has been blown up the last couple of weeks. We're so appreciative of everybody that's been checking out the videos. If you're new and you're coming back to this one, hopefully we're going to deliver for you guys yet again. But I think we have a pretty fun concept for today. But before we get into that, Dale, how are we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing really great. Overall, I've been having some tough weeks in fantasy and college, so I guess I can rest my laurels on my Miami Dolphins for at least another week.
There you go.
Oh.
There you go. It sucks to be an Ohio State fan right now, I'll tell you that much. So
it does, but it's okay. It's not feeling as bad anymore.
Why? Just because some time has passed, or what?
Yeah, that's not it. That's the only reason.
Right.
But I don't want to talk about today. I would much rather talk about some of these dynasty players.
Fair enough. And yeah, it's been interesting. Like I said in the opener there, we're coming up on the playoffs for most teams, and some teams the trade deadline has already passed, and we can talk about this really quickly at the top here. But dynasty trade deadlines, yay, nay? Are you for them? Do you think they make sense at all?
I think they do a little bit, but also I feel if you're just gonna sell your whole team just to win a championship, I think you should be allowed to.
Yep. That's where I stand because
I think as long as you're paid up with those, if you're selling picks especially, I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they're selling all these picks and then they're not paid up for that and then they dip.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's the thing with that.
I think that's the big.
Don't be a scumbag. If you're going to sell out to go win a title, don't just leave the league next year. Like, that's just a scumbag move. But, assuming that everybody that listens to this podcast is a decent person, I would say,
they are.
Yeah, exactly. You guys are great. It's not you guys. It's the scumbags in your leagues. That's who we're railing on. But no, I would say the dynasty trade deadlines don't make sense. And I think, honestly, they're a detriment to good leagues. And here's my case why. We talk about this almost every year, at least I have for the last couple of years. But trade deadline, it puts a cap on being able to move players, right? Obviously, oh yeah, you don't want to sell out. Oh, this guy's going to give 4 first-round picks to go get Jamar Chase and go win the title. Well, one, you're not guaranteed that you're going to get the title, right? You're not going to win necessarily. We had an interesting comment on one of the videos just the other day. Would you trade Mark Andrews in Dynasty for Travis Kelce straight up as a contender to try and get the title this year? I would not be doing that. I'd be targeting someone else with Mark Andrews, who has a little bit more longevity behind them, because you never know that Travis Kelce is not going to get injured. You don't know that he's, going to be able to put up a good week in that week. Maybe it's a bad week. Maybe he just has like 5 points, and you traded Mark Andrews, who you could have for 3, 4, 5 more years even, and you got a 1 year to 2 year player. Like, it's just not always going to work out from a production standpoint. On top of that, it also gives the bad teams a chance to sell good players to needy and desperate teams who, really need a Travis Kelce to try and put them over the edge, right? You can do that in the very, very last week. Like, oh, okay, I didn't think I'd win round 1 of the playoffs, and I'm in the semis now, and, I really need a tight end. Let me go get Travis Kelce. Oh, well, the trade deadline was 4 weeks ago, so you're screwed, right? But it gives those guys who are desperate a chance to, 1, go get the title. So it helps the people that are in playoffs, right? But 2, those teams that, well, also now I can sell Kelce for a little bit more than he's worth, right? And that's where I think it keeps the league better, because it helps the bad teams not be bad forever, because they can sell good players at a premium. It also helps the wannabe contenders to go and try and get a title. So it's a win-win for everybody. I just don't understand, like, the only argument against it is just the loser mindset of, well, he paid 4 first. I would have paid 4 first. Well, Then work the
Right.
deal, man. Work the deal.
Exactly.
It's on
Exactly.
you.
And yeah, and I think it goes into the whole dynasty strategy that you have. If you're
Mm-hmm.
very one now and you know and you're able to do that, like I feel you should be able to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess on the other side though, that people feel that like in the NFL they have their own trade deadline at week 8, you know,
Which is also
and I
way
think
too early, by the way, for
it's
the
I
NFL.
don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that.
But
That's a whole different issue.
I mean,
But you
yeah, I
know,
get it. I get it.
yeah,
But in the NFL, do you have super flex, like where you start 2 quarterbacks? Like,
no, you don't.
it.
No, you
I
don't. Like
get the argument to
it's
an extent,
fantasy football. Yes, it's fantasy football.
right?
Like you're there to have fun, and you're there to really kind of explore different
Do they get 4
strategies.
points for a touchdown if it's passing?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah,
there's differences. It's fantasy, guys. You can take it away from real NFL to an extent, right? So, how many of you guys have actual defenses and kickers in your leagues? Most of the time, you cut those guys out, right? Well, are they cutting those out on the actual field? It'd make offense a lot more interesting if they did, but but yeah. So, trade deadlines, get rid of them if you can. Vote for it, get it out of your leagues. But yeah, it's going to be a fun one here today. And as we're going towards that trade deadline, we wanted to talk about, and that's what leads us into today's episode, we're going to talk about some dynasty cornerstones, some untradeable players that you need to make sure that you're not getting rid of going forward, because these are the pieces that are going to be the building blocks of your team for years to come, right? They're the guys that you want to build your team around. And we're going to go through each position, talk about a few different guys. We have very different strategies on how we're going to be talking about the players here, so I'm pretty excited to get into that. But before you do, if you can, please like, comment, and subscribe on the video. You know, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be coming out with more content, especially as we get closer to the off season. We're going to have more and more rookie content and just dynasty content in general. We're really going to be ramping up. We've already got a ton of videos. I think we've got over 150 videos on this last season where we're going through a ton of stuff. You know, we're figuring it out as we go. We've come a long way. You know, this time last year we didn't even have thumbnails, so hopefully you guys are liking our new thumbnails. My wife is killing it with those, but you know, we're really trying to step it up for you guys, and hopefully you guys like the content. You can also find us on Twitter at TDC_Calvin for myself, at Dynasty_Dale for my co-host here, and the podcast at FF After Dark. We're always there to answer your guys' questions. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, Rumble, anywhere really that podcasts are found. Spotify, I don't know, whoever I didn't hit, we're there too. So that said, let's jump into it. We're going to start with the quarterback position. We're going to name a couple of guys that we view as cornerstones. Some of these guys we're going to agree on. Some of them we're going to disagree on. We'll give you a little bit of information as to why, and then we're going to hit up running back, wide receiver, tight end, and all that. We're not going to hit any rookies today, as in the 2024 rookies. We're going to probably talk about a couple of rookies I suspect here from this year, but
I think we would, yes.
Yeah, so that said, let's hit up your list of untradeable or dynasty cornerstone quarterback players. And you can just list them all out, and we'll talk about them from there.
Yep. Yeah, I'll go ahead. So my first one is obviously Patrick Mahomes. You know, he's QB1 in most any format. He's fantastic. He's gonna be there probably for another decade.
Right.
So he's a pretty easy layup. And then I got Josh Allen. I know he's been getting a lot of hate this year with all his turnovers and his poor play, but but when the man is on, he's on fire. It's hard for him to be stopped. So,
yep.
you know, I feel he's pretty safe. You know, has a very safe floor every week, and that's the same with like Jalen Hurts, which I also have Jalen Hurts on here right now. I'm still not the biggest Jalen Hurts fan personally.
For fantasy, man, that dude cannot
miss.
Yes,
it's for fantasy. He is lights out, and you know he has been since he's been the starter, which is great. So, and then I got Joe Burrow, Joey B. You know he's injured right now, unfortunately, but you know he's very solid. You know as long as he's healthy, he's gonna get you 20-25 points a week, pretty easy. And then the last guy I had is actually a rookie this year in CJ Stroud.
Who did you have after Hurts again? Sorry.
Burrow.
Okay. Yep. Burrow. Okay. And then CJ Stroud. Yeah, he's been going. If you want to highlight your former Buckeye to cheer you up over that Michigan, Penn State, Michigan. Who was it?
It
Michigan,
was
right?
Michigan. No, stop, stop. Yes, it was against Michigan. So, anyways, CJ Stroud. I've always been pretty high on CJ Stroud. I feel, yeah, at least coming from it's a Georgia game last January into right now. He's really emerged as this as a generational quarterback, which he was. There was a former GM that was quoted from the Raiders saying that he wanted to draft CJ Stroud because he was a generational player, and Josh McDaniels said no on that, and he wanted good old Jimmy G, which we saw how that experiment really worked in Vegas. But that's beside the point.
I
But
mean, yeah, nobody
Stroud's
called him a
been
good coach, right?
yes, Stroud's been lights out, and I think he's really in the MVP race this year, which is crazy for him as a rookie.
Yeah, for sure. And my list is pretty similar. Like I
Mhm.
said, we're going to have a few differences here. And my list of untradeable players is a little bit longer here. And we talked about this briefly, but I wanted to give a little bit more context into why these players, because they're going to be surprising, that's for sure. But Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and Stroud, I have the same. I don't have Burrow in there. And Burrow is great when he's healthy, but he's been banged up a lot, man.
Yes,
And,
that's true.
you
That's
know,
that, that's very true.
availability is the best ability. It's not that Joe Burrow is untradeable. Like the whole reason I'm thinking about this is I would be willing to move on from Joe Burrow because I think you can get a premium package for Joe Burrow that is worth his value. And, this is key to my approach to
Thought
this.
process on it.
Yeah, to this list of players, right? Because the two players that I'm going to add to this list, I'm going to have 6 guys here. So I've got Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and Stroud. The 2 players I'm going to add to this list are guys that are extremely undervalued and they outproduce their value constantly. Now, it might change in a couple of years' time, but number 1 is going to be Dak Prescott, and number 2 is going to be Brock Purdy. And if you look at Dynasty rankings right now, if you go wherever you want, Keep Trade Cut, Fantasy Calc, any of them. If you look at any of them, neither one of those guys is a top 10 guy. Dak Prescott is around 11, and Purdy's around 14 to 15, somewhere in that range. Dak Prescott is balling out right now this year, in an offense that people were not excited, including me. Mike McCarthy offense, I had a little bit of hope about it, but I was not thrilled about the concept of it, and Dak Prescott is looking amazing. This entire offense is clicking very well, and Dak Prescott should be a top 6 quarterback in terms of rankings, and he's perennially outside of the top 10. And the reason why I call him a cornerstone is because you're not going to get what Dak Prescott's worth on the field ever. Like ever. 1 first-round pick. I had somebody come to me for Dak Prescott in one of my other leagues that I have him in, and they offered me a late first for Dak. And it's like, it's not even worth it, right?
No,
what are you going to
not.
get with a late first-round pick that's going to give you a top 6 quarterback? And this is super flex too. So it's like, it's 100% not worth it. Same thing goes for Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, and, I'm a big Trey Lance fan. I don't think Trey Lance got the best. I think he got the short end of the stick, essentially, right, in San Francisco. But on the flip side, Brock Purdy has shown why he deserves to be the starter over there, right? He is extremely good, and he's the perfect guy for the Shanahan system. And if you look at his game logs, he has not been underperforming at all so far. Right now, he's the quarterback number 11 on the season. And I think that goes to, he's had 2 bad games, and I'm using my league standard scoring, but he had against Cleveland a 7-point game. And then this last week against Seattle, they really didn't even do much. They kind of handled Seattle pretty badly in that one, but he only had 10 points there. The next lowest is 14, 16. He's been around 20 points, which is good in this league scoring format, almost every single game. Like, the dude is extremely consistent. He's like the new Kirk Cousins. You're not going to be able to get what Purdy's worth in terms of a trade package that, okay, maybe if you can get like a high, like, you know, a Drake May or somebody like that, I'd be considering moving on from Purdy, but nobody's going to give you that for Brock Purdy right now. So that's why I call him more of a cornerstone. You can build your team around a Dak Prescott, a Brock Purdy. It doesn't necessarily have to be a top 3, top 4 guy. And you can use that value that these guys are lower, you know, and get more value other places. You can invest in other sides of your team, right? And okay, you might not win the trade calculators or the roster rankings or whatever, but your team is going to be locked and loaded with these 2 guys, and they're untradeable because you're just never going to get the worth. What do you think?
I hear that argument. You know, I think especially with Dak, he's just going to depreciate in value. It's the longer he's in the league, you know. You know, I do know he's having an excellent year, and I think I agree that you really can't trade him right now because his value is just going to depreciate. Now with Purdy, I hear your arguments, but I kind of frame him in, like, I kind of put him in the Trevor Lawrence Tua block, I guess you could say. And that is kind of where I put Purdy. You know, he's good, but you know, how good is he? You know,
Yeah,
I
but
feel
I think the difference between them, and I hear what you're saying, like production wise, he's definitely in that bucket, right? With those 2 guys. The difference is when you talk about Tua and when you talk about Trevor Lawrence, people are excited about getting those guys on their team, right?
true. Yep.
They're not excited about getting Brock Purdy, right?
No,
Like that's the
really
difference, right? And that's why I think he's a cornerstone, is because you're not going to be able to get the value. Like, again, I got offered a late first for Dak and a super flex. I guarantee you I could probably buy, if the guy wasn't a contender, I could probably buy Purdy for a late first in most leagues,
100%,
you know.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not worth it. Again, who are you going to get at a late first that's going to be a top 12 guy? You know, and he's going to be one of the most consistent guys. If you even go back to last year, right, his stretch, his whatever, like, I think he's right around 16 games now, 17 games. Mm-hmm. Like, his time in the NFL, he's one of the most consistent quarterbacks that we've had.
Great, and I don't disagree with that. I think I just need to see more for him to be considered a cornerstone to me.
Fair.
You know, I need to see that. You know,
he's the next Tom Brady, man.
Stop, Cal, please stop. No. So, you know, I think it's very interesting how we look at these players, you know, compared to how we might have last year. You know,
for sure.
I think, you know, I honestly think we would have had Trevor Lawrence in this list potentially. You know, even Tua at a certain point. And I think it's interesting how these lists kind of are ever in flux, and you know, it's with the Brock Purdy's of the world, like, weren't even heard of at this time last year.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I did a startup draft last year that was like in playoffs, right? It was right around the playoffs, and I got so much crap because in a dynasty startup, I took Brock Purdy in round 8. I had Trey Lance in round 4 in this mock, right? Or in this, it was not a mock, it was an actual startup for an actual league. Super early draft, right? And I got so much crap for taking Brock Purdy as he's playing his way through the playoffs, right? And just dominating through against the playoff teams, right? And I took him in round 8, and people were so mad. They're like, oh, this is the dumbest pick ever. This dude's not going to be anything long-term. And you know, he's my starter. And I got him in round 8 of a startup. And it's like, all right, fair enough. But yeah, it's just crazy how much people devalue these type of guys.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it goes back to, you know, draft capital.
Yeah.
You know, I think most quarterbacks would be successful in the Shanahan system.
Mm-hmm.
Most,
I agree.
Not all quarterbacks are going to be successful, but most are. So,
I mean, could you imagine CJ Stroud in San Francisco? Like, oh,
he would be lighting everything on fire.
Yep,
it'd be amazing. But
all right, let's jump over to running backs here. How many running backs do you have in your cornerstone rankings? I'm interested to see your guys.
I only have 4.
Okay, I have 5. Might have a different one for the 5th one.
Yeah, we probably do. So, you know, obviously I have Bijan Robinson.
Okay.
As my number 1. I love Bijan. I think he's been appropriately utilized. Oddly enough, with Arthur Smith, I feel
they're getting better too. Like it's definitely a an adjustment
transition.
period.
Yeah. It's been a transition from him in college, and then to the NFL. I think finally Arthur Smith is figuring out how to use him.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that means he's probably going to keep his job, but that's a different story for a different day. But
Right.
but I'm really excited about Bijan and what he's going to do, and if he has what he did it'd been week 12 or
Yep.
week 13, um, no, week 12, excuse me. Um, like if that's any glimpse of his future, that's a CMC future.
Oh yeah,
And
that's his
I'm
potential for sure.
yes, 100%. And I think he can do that most weeks
Hmm.
if given the opportunity. I think quarterback play for him is going to be big,
Yep.
and being able to which I think Atlanta's going to get another quarterback, which I think that's just going to even help his opportunities even more. So
Yep. Yep.
I'm really excited about him. And then I got Brees Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, I do like Brees Hall. I think he's coming off the ACL. He's looking very explosive. I know there's a lot of turmoil in New York with their offensive line and who their quarterback is, but I think some of those issues are gonna fix themselves.
Hmm.
Um, Especially for the years to come. I'm more excited about him next year than I am this year.
Sure.
And then I have CMC, Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
He's
Obviously.
ever yeah, he is ever eternal like Derrick Henry was. But I think he has the receiving upside that we love to see, and I think he's perfect for the Shanahan offense, and
he's a little older, but I think he's
he
still
is
got 2-3
he
more
is
years. So
yes, and I think the key is that he's been able to keep himself healthy since he's been on the Niners.
like the only way you're going to trade
That's
Christian McCaffrey is if it's in a deal for Brees or Bijan
yes,
or
yes,
probably your next guy, who I think will
yes.
probably have the same one here.
Yes, and it's Jahmyr Gibbs
Yep.
is the
Yep.
other
Same
one.
guy.
Yep,
Yep.
yep, yep. So I mean, all of those four guys are pretty high up.
Mhm.
I thought about like Devon Achane. I really thought about him, but I
Mhm.
think he's a little bit too.
The problem is you only saw 3 games and then he got injured, right?
Yes,
On
yes,
IR,
yes.
came back, got injured again. It's just unfortunate, right?
It was, and I thought about him. I was thinking about other players, but I think their situations are a little worse than these guys are kind of like locked and loaded. Like they're going to be there for the next 3 to 5 years.
Right. And yeah, yep, I'm with you. The only guy that I actually have on there that you don't is going to be probably a surprise here, but in the same vein of Devin Achane, I forget how to
Echan.
say it. I forget even how to say it. It's been so long. Kyron Williams with the Rams.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
the reason
Okay.
why Sean McVay, I don't think Sean McVay's going anywhere. Like, there's been these
Yeah.
rumors about him retiring for like 3 years
For
now,
years. For
since
years.
the
Yes.
since the Super Bowl, right? Whenever that was, a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's going anywhere. He likes his job. He doesn't want to stop. He's a new father now, and if that wasn't going to be enough to make him go to the broadcasting booth, I don't think anything is going to, right?
Anything was right.
So I think they want to get this team back together. They had the no picks forever, and they're trying to kind of rebuild this roster, right? And Kyron Williams is a good player. We've seen that now through all of his healthy games this year. And we know from history, from Todd Gurley, when Sean McVay likes his running back, which is rare, right? He, for whatever reason, didn't really like Cam Akers, hated Darrell Henderson. He's gone through a list of guys. But when Kyron Williams has played, and if you're on Sean McVay's good side, it's just going to be fantasy success, right? And right now he's kind of in the same vein as Brock Purdy, right? He's currently ranked as the RB13 consensus, right? And there's no way I'm moving him for RB13 value. No chance at all, right? Like if you were to look at that in a trade calculator, and I don't like trade calculators too much, but you're talking about like Isaiah Pacheco, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard. These are the same guys right around his value. DK Metcalf, Kyle Pitts, DJ Moore. Like I'm taking him over all these players, hands down, not even close, right? And that just tells you that he's undervalued, and this might adjust in time. But as of right now, he's a cornerstone where I'm keeping him on my team. Even though the trade deadlines in your leagues is coming up, I'm not moving this guy because I think that his value is only going to continue to grow as the year goes on, as the offseason goes on, and people are going to get hyped around this guy. Like I would consider selling him if he was ranked right behind, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne in that tier of player where you're getting like a DJ Moore and maybe a late first or something like that, you know, or a early second, something good packaged on DJ Moore. The guy's just very undervalued. Same with Brock Purdy, same with Dak Prescott. And that's the consistent theme with my rankings is I'm picking the cornerstones of guys. Like you might be considering selling Kyron Williams right now. You might be considering selling Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott. And I'm saying hold off. Make those guys the cornerstones and just make sure that you're good to go at those positions. You don't have to have the Patrick Mahomes who can put up 70 points at quarterback once a year, right? But you're going to get the guys that are going to consistently produce time and time and time again, week in and week out. And that's how you're going to win your leagues. If that's how you're going to have continued success, right? So that's what I'm going for with that. But, you know, what are your thoughts on
Kyron? I do love that argument. But I feel that running backs are replaceable and they're a dime a dozen.
They are.
And I think we've seen that running backs in a Sean McVay system are going to be successful regardless of who they have.
Sort of. I mean, Cam Akers was not successful before the Achilles tear. Darrell Henderson had spurts of production, right? Royce Freeman. Like, there's a list of guys. Like, I do think that that argument is a little overused with Sean McVay, where it takes a special like connection, right, between the running back and McVay. But when you have that talent level or the guy that just fits with McVay and what he's trying to do, yeah, it's, you know, it's a certain mold of players. Any of them can fit for McVay.
Yeah, and I hear that, but I feel I wouldn't be shocked if they draft another running back eventually too, because he's injury prone. You know, I feel, you know, like, you know, it was his rookie year he got hurt. It was his sophomore season he got hurt. So
yeah,
you know, there's a little bit. I mean, there's a little pattern there that he's more injury prone than these other guys that we've talked about, and I think that could be worrisome. And for a lot of people, that could make him highly tradable. You know, and a pretty good asset because he could get injured and not come back to play. So I hear that, but I'm more off of Kyron Williams.
All right. Let's jump over to wide receiver here, and you can break down your list. How many guys you got here?
I actually have 7 guys on them.
Yeah, dude, wide receiver is so deep.
It's very
so
deep.
hard.
It's very deep. Yeah, I added one because I like your ideology of what you're kind of going with, and I think that's a good way to build your roster a little bit in a you know, it's especially for Dynasty in a, you know, a 2 to 3 year window. It's huge.
Well, that's huge. And I don't want to. It's kind of a humble brag, but in my work league, right, my oldest Dynasty league, I was supposed to be rebuilding this year. I was trying to be a top Dynasty pick, and the way we have a lottery for our non-playoff teams, right? And I was trying to be the number 1 overall pick, highest odds in the lottery to go and get like a Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, I did not think I was going to be competitive. I am 1 week away from securing the bye in this league, and it's like nice. And it's literally just because I have Dak, I have Keenan Allen, I have Brandon Ayuk, I have guys that are just consistent. DeAndre Swift. I've got guys that are consistently getting me good points. You know, so Keenan Allen, obviously he's had a couple massive weeks this year. Dak, same thing. But it's like I'm just putting up consistent numbers every single week. And, you know, you still have the boom games, but the floors on these guys are just so high that, you know, they don't, if one of them has a down week, if everybody has like a solid week that week, you're still going to be scoring like 150 and winning in most weeks, right? So that's what it kind of changed my mindset a little bit, is just how well this roster is doing without the superstars, right? Like, I gave up CeeDee Lamb, who is a cornerstone, for some pieces in this league, and, you know, I'm still doing just fine, right? And it's funny because the consistency is what's really been leading to a lot of success for this roster.
Absolutely. So, with that, well, I mean, you kind of spoiled one with is with CeeDee Lamb,
right?
You know, I I've been more on CD Lamb this year with
Oh
how
yeah.
Dak has really progressed,
Oh
and
yeah.
with CD, with him just being the only guy. I mean, he's not the only guy. Like they still have Brandon Cooks, like they still have other weapons, but
This is Mike
um,
McCarthy 101, man. Just the
I know.
number one guy.
He's just hyper targeting.
Yep.
It's the wide receiver one, and that's CD Lamb, and it's great. And CD Lamb's fantastic.
Yep.
Along with that, I have Justin Jefferson. I know he finally got the injury bug this year with the hamstring, and hopefully he comes back after the bye and can really bring some teams home. Mine in particular. Back to more relevance. But before the injury, he was lights out. He's fantastic week in and week out. AJ Brown is another one for me. I love me some AJ Brown. He's extremely physical. He has another cornerstone person throwing him the ball, which is fantastic.
Yep.
He
And they're
I would
best
say
friends off the field. Like
yes, and he's the wide receiver one in on that team. So I feel that's great. I also have Jamar Chase when
Yep.
it's when Burrow's healthy. Jamar Chase is him. He's fantastic. Like he's someone that you put in your lineup and just forget about it for years.
Yep.
Another one I have is Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yep. I have him too.
I've really liked what Amon-Ra's been doing this year, and he's been extremely consistent.
Dude,
I
he's
think
like the sneakiest elite player
he
of
is.
all time. Like I was looking at his stats and he's averaging like I don't know, like 80 yards a week. And it's like how? You never hear it or see it.
Yeah.
Like I watch Lions games and it's like he's so quiet about it. Like he does none of the showmanship or it's first down and celebrations on it. Like it's just I love him because it's just he's like old school Larry Fitzgerald to me, where it's just business as usual, man.
Yep.
Like
yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And with Amon-Ra, like I saw stats saying like I think he scored like 15 points or more in like 16 straight games or something crazy like that. Like it's just been extremely consistent. Like it's not like these huge games, but he's just extremely consistent.
Right, and that's enough. Like that's enough to put you in the lower
100%.
top 12 guys. And wide receivers, a lot of them have down weeks, right? Even AJ Brown, who you just talked about, right? He's had a couple of down weeks this year, but he's also had those boom weeks, right? And that's where he's a little bit more of a boom bust player. But Amon-Ra, he's just the little engine that could, man, chugga, just keep going.
Right. And these last two players, I think you might appreciate the thought process in that, and that these are guys that you necessarily won't always get the value back from them.
Okay.
Especially with what you paid up for this player in the offseason. And Garrett Wilson is one of my guys.
Okay.
I love Garrett. I mean, I'm a OSU homer. I get it. But with Garrett Wilson, I think he's very elite, and I think if he had Rodgers, he would have soared this year. And I think that's really kind of stunted his growth, and that's what people were seeing, coming into the offseason. They were seeing this guy that was going to really explode onto the scene, and we haven't seen it because they have Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle throwing him the ball. Maybe.
Who else you got?
And then the last guy I have is Tyreek Hill.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I don't have Tyreek as a cornerstone.
Yeah,
maybe that's this is the Stephon Diggs from a couple years ago where I didn't have Diggs as a top 12 guy, and it could blow up in my face. But I actually have Olave instead of Tyreek. But let me hear your argument for Tyreek.
Really? Well, it's for Tyreek. I know he's already said that he's going to retire in a couple years.
He can change his mind. Said that. He can change his mind.
Yeah, he can very well change his mind, but he's just been so good, and I think you with that production, you would have to get that much back, or at least feel you got that much back, and I don't think you're going to be able to necessarily get that.
Right, and
is the biggest thing for
his production, dude, is so good. It's
out of sight. It's
the reason why I didn't put Tyreek is the same reason I don't have Diggs, or Cooper Kupp when he's healthy. There's a little bit of a weird situation there with Cooper Kupp, but like I just don't have that tier of guys just because they are older. And that's literally the only reason.
Yeah, and I agree. I had Tyreek off this until about a minute ago,
No,
to be
I get
honest.
it though.
And
Like he's so good,
yeah,
man.
and like it's just a lot of it's with his age, but I feel he's so consistent. He's been
Right.
very consistent when he's on the field
Yep.
that really hard not to look at that compared to what Diggs is doing and what
Yeah.
and like what Devontae Adams is doing,
Yep. Yep.
and those kind of players.
Yeah, and we'll hear this in just a second when we get to tight ends, but like I don't have Kelsey for the same reason. You just don't know
Okay.
how many years left until, Father Time is undefeated, right? And the old ceiling for wide receivers was 29. After you hit 30, it was, nails in the coffin, you're done, right?
Yep.
And, Diggs is over 30. Adams is almost 31. Tyreek Hill will be 30 here by the Super Bowl, right around the Super Bowl. And, you just don't know how much longer you have with these guys. And if you could guarantee 2-3 more years with all of them, okay, sure. Yeah, I would build my team around these guys, but it's just, you never know. And that's the one thing that scares me with the older guys, which is why I kind of leaned away from them. Don't sell them, unless you're getting a king's ransom for these guys because of the production that they're going to provide. But
100%.
I don't think that there's somebody that you cannot move whatsoever. I think people are willing to pay for Tyreek if they're going to go and get him, is kind of the thought process I have there. I did have Chris Olave. I do like Chris Olave, just like Garrett Wilson for you. The thing with Chris Olave, I think and this is from a full PPR standpoint, the arguments that he was kind of down in the middle of the season, I don't really care that much. Like,
right.
The whole team went through a little bit of a growth spurt, started off super hot. Now he's back to looking really good as well. And Chris Olave, I think that I don't like the Saints, and I wish this guy was on any other team than the Saints, just because I don't want to root for him because I hate the Saints. But the dude's good. He's a very, very good player. He's extremely productive. If you look at his measurables and everything, like he's outplaying Garrett Wilson with, similar targets, catchable passes and all. Like if you look at the advanced metrics into this stuff, Chris Olave's balling out. And I think that he's we're talking about Tyreek Hill. How long does he have left? Devontae Adams, these other guys. Even A.J. Brown. I love A.J. Brown, but he's 26 and he's kind of boomer bust, right? I could see Chris Olave being one of those more consistent guys that you want to build your team around long term. The beauty of it is, though, it's so deep at wide receiver. The one other guy I want to talk about here really quickly, I don't think you would expect this one, is going to be Brandon Ayuk with the Niners. And
I really thought about Brandon Ayuk. I really thought about him, but yes, go ahead with what you're
the last one on this list. And, I think this year there's going to be a lot of people out there that say, oh, well, he's only wide receiver 16 on the year. Why would he be a cornerstone? Well, one, you're not going to get the value if you're going to sell him, right? Again, similar theme through all these guys. You're not going to get the value of this player as you're trying to shop him. And he's so consistent, like every week. This year, he's really become the focal point of the wide receiver passing game for the Niners. Debo's been banged up yet again. I love Debo, but the dude catches more injuries than colds, right? It's crazy. And George Kittle, love him, but again, he's very inconsistent. The most consistent players on this team are Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk. And, next year, they're going to have to pay him a lot of money. And I do believe they're going to because of how pivotal he is to this team. If you remember back when they did the Bosa signing, they created a lot of cap space for next year that they're rolling into next season. They're going to have quite a bit. I don't remember where they are exactly on the tier list of cap space, but they're up there. And I think a lot of that's going to go to Brandon Ayuk. They're going to pay this guy the money that he's owed. Former first-round pick, playing well. He's not got the super boom weeks, but he does have enough. Like week 1, 34 points. Not this last week, but the week before, 28 points against Tampa Bay, 21 against Arizona. He does have those games where he's a little bit more, his floor is very high, but his ceiling is also very, very high as well. So I just think that as they go forward, they're going to pay him a lot of money. And in next year and the years on past that, right? Debo is still under contract for a while, but I could see this being more of a Brandon Ayuk centered team with Debo being the highlight piece where before it was kind of always looked at as Debo's team with Ayuk as the side piece, you know, the highlighting, you know, catch-all type of player. So I think that Brandon Ayuk has really balled out this year. He's not necessarily exploding from a production standpoint, but he's, again, Mr. Consistent, and you're not going to be able to get the value for Ayuk if you were to go and trade him. So just hold on to him, man. Just hold on to him. Better days are ahead, and his value is only going to go up from here.
Agreed. Yeah, and I really agree with that. You know, I was kind of between putting him on there, and like I definitely see that, and I see him, you know, being a pretty elite guy. You know, I think for this year, you know, like he's definitely a top 12 guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I know he's had his injuries, but I feel most players do. So,
Right.
you know, and throughout
points
his
per
career,
game, he's top 12. He missed week 3 because of the shoulder injury, and he only played half of the game that he got the shoulder injury. So that's a game and a half of lost production. But if you take out those two, like the dude's top 12. So, yeah, but he's a good player. All right, let's wrap this video up. We'll try and go through. I don't think it'll take us much time. Who you got at tight end and why?
I only have 3 guys on this list, so
okay.
I'll keep it short and sweet. I have Mark Andrews. I think he is very irreplaceable in the Ravens offense, especially. But you know, I feel he is a man amongst boys. You know, in the tight end position. You know, he's very steady. You know, hopefully he's going to be around for the next 3 to 5 years. You know, and
hopefully,
and he's something that and he's a guy that you're going to be able to build around and just plug and play, not worry about him. And then the next guy I have is TJ Hawkinson. It's with the Vikings. You know, it's the same idea. He's been extremely consistent. You know, I think he's really benefited from not having Justin Jefferson, but you know, for last year, like he was the second target in that offense anyway. So, you know, it's because they didn't have Addison yet. So, you know, I think he's benefited from Justin Jefferson, but I also feel that, you know, he's really consistent. Like he's a safety valve right now for whoever's going to be quarterback.
Yeah, and I would not be shocked if they bring back Kirk Cousins next year. Like the team loves him. He was balling out, man.
They do. It just depends on the money number.
Yeah, it does. It does. 100%.
Is the biggest thing. So, and then the last guy I have is another Detroit Lion and Sam Laporta. I think
I have the same guy. Same 3.
I think he's just been really consistent, very steady. You know, you know, I think even when some other Lions players don't get their lion's share of targets, that you know, he's still a guy with Amon-Ra that is going to get that and going to be consistent, and
he's extremely consistent. Yep.
And I find it ironic that
as a rookie too, right?
Yeah, and he's a rookie, and you know, I find it ironic that we have 3 Lions on this list.
I don't. Honestly, I mean, this team is good, man.
Yeah, it is, but like if you were to think about it, you know, a few years ago, it's wild.
I know.
It's wild to think how far they've gotten with this.
And the thing, you know, the one thing I want to warn people about is like Sam Laporta. People are going to say, "Oh, well, he's already doing this as a rookie. He can't really go up from here." These guys can get better. They can get better. He's only 23 years old.
And he's going to get better. Like it's pretty typical for tight ends to take a year and a half to really get the feel of things, because you know they're blocking like offensive linemen sometimes, and then they're in the receiving room all the other time. So
yeah, exactly.
You know,
and you got to think from a physical standpoint too. The dude's only 23 years old. You know, I didn't hit my physical. Well, I probably never hit my physical peak. We'll put it that way. But I didn't, you know, most of these guys don't hit their physical peak as elite, like males, you know what I mean? Like muscular wise until about 25, 26. The dude's got 3 more years to just beef up. You know what I mean? Like he's going to get bigger. He's going to get faster. He's going to get stronger. And, you know, he's already got the hands and the route running refinement that you need from him. As he gets more acclimated to the NFL, it's just going to get better for him. And that's why I also have one other rookie on this list, and that's going to be Dalton Kincaid.
Okay.
And Dalton Kincaid, what we've seen from him this last stretch of games, he's been pretty consistent. And I think it's been a little underrated because, you know, the Bills are, they're people are talking about how, oh, you know, they have so many struggles and blah, 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 blah. But Dalton Kincaid has been very consistent for the most part. And I think it's been just overlooked because of, how up and down the team has been. But, you look at the last, ever since he missed a game against the Giants in week 6, right? This is a standard PPR, no tight end premium. 15.5, 17.5, 16, 16, 10, and then 8. So the last 2 weeks are a little bit more down weeks, but he's been pretty consistently good, especially for the tight end. He's the tight end 9 on the season as a rookie with, 5 games in the beginning of the year and a missed game of just bad, 6, 9, 2, 6, 3. That's not great. And then they've changed everything. So, I do think that Dalton Kincaid is a rookie. There are the same arguments for Sam Laporta for Dalton Kincaid. And I think that better days are ahead for this guy. Don't be selling him at all. I think that he's going to only continue to grow in value as time goes on.
Yeah, no, and I definitely hear that. So, what are your thoughts on Kyle Pitts?
Until Atlanta gets a quarterback that's worth something, I just can't, man. I can't. If they trade for Justin Fields in the offseason, I'm all aboard the Pitts train. 100%, I will be the conductor of that train yet again. But as of right now, he's not producing that it's worth it. And, his value, you can make the argument that his value is not good enough, right? That you need to just hold him because you're not going to get what he's worth, what you invested in him. So, just hold on to him. But yeah, dude, it's just, you can't continue to, it's sunk cost fallacy at this point, right? Where, I'm not actively trying to sell him. If I got a trade for him where it was his value, but you got to think at the same time, he's younger than Dalton Kincaid. Isn't that crazy?
Wild.
He's 2 months older than Sam Laporta. 2 months.
Wild.
I just don't want to write Kyle Pitts off because he is a unicorn. Right?
And I don't either. But I think for this exercise that he's
I think you just can't consider him a cornerstone. You just can't.
Yes, and I agree with that. He's just a tier below.
Yep. I want him on my team, especially when again, I would not be shocked if the Falcons go and get Justin Fields. I think that all the writing on the wall right now is that the Bears are going to get Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what everybody's talking about right now. And it's more than likely going to happen. They're going to fire Eberflus. They're probably going to try and get an offensive mind in here to save this team and, save the GM's job. And yeah, I would not be shocked if Caleb Williams is on. Would I like it if Fields stayed on the Bears? Yes, but I think that they're going to trade him for another first-round pick. And, let's say Atlanta's picking 25 because they make the playoffs more than likely. Right. 25 for Justin Fields is kind of a steal, to be honest with you. I get the whole contract. Maybe they can get a 2 back on top of it. I don't know. But, yeah, Fields feels like he's going to be in Atlanta next year. And we can see what he does with Kmet. Fields does like the tight end. And, dude, Fields with Pitts would be disgusting. Amazing. Him in London, him and Pitts would be a dream come true. But, yeah, we'll see what ultimately happens there. But until he gets a quarterback, I just can't. So,
heard.
All right, let us know your guys' thoughts on our cornerstone rankings. Again, this is all just because the trade deadlines are coming. And, if they've passed or if they're this week for you guys, don't sell these players. That's the whole point of this argument. Do not sell these players because you're not going to get the production or the value that these guys are worth for a long-term basis. So, make sure you guys are just being smart. If you have any questions, reach out to us again on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale, or at the podcast at FF After Dark. You can hit us up in the comments down below, and we'd be happy to help you guys out there as well. So, make sure you guys are subscribing, hitting all our content. We love you guys for checking us out and for really making the last few episodes really blow up. We really do appreciate that, especially if you made it this long in the video. Thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, Dale, any last thoughts?
Nope.
All right. Until next time, thank you guys for listening. Have a good night.
And we all got dreams. We all want things. But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?